The VF-1 XL is now a roller, and this is how we do it. Well, hey Crosskart fans, here it is, the suspension one. Now I'm going to do this one a lot simpler. If you check the channel, I broke down shocks on a mathematical level if you wanted to tune in your shocks exactly to your application. I'm going to do this one a little simpler because that's how most of us do it. We like easy, we like mounting points, we like it straightforward, we like it to look nice. So I will give you some pointers on how to do that, and if you want to dig into the math, check out that suspension special. Now, as far as shocks go, used ATV shocks, new shocks, and purpose-built shocks are extremely expensive, and I honestly don't like to spend that extra money when you can get used stuff that works just as well. One thing I will do every time I buy a shock is I will look for adjustability. That is the key to repurposing shocks for your Crosskart. I buy shocks that have threaded bodies. If you have a threaded body, it really doesn't matter as much what your actual spring rate is because you can change it. You have a ton of adjustability. Another thing I'll look for is aftermarket support. If you buy a Fox 1.5 inch body, can you get different springs for it? And what are your options, right? And then finally, since these are factory shocks, there are tons of shock companies all over the country that can build you a specific set of shocks. So if you get your cart set up just with what you have, and then you want to lock it in a little better for trail riding or jumping or street or whatever you're doing with it, you can just take them to a shock shop, let them know what you got. They'll weigh your corners, come up with new dampers, and new springs for your shocks, and you'll pretty much have a custom set of shocks at a significantly lesser cost. So the order of operations here, built the frame, got it lined up, got the A-arms mounted, got the shocks on the factory positions in the front. I have the appropriate tire that I plan to run. These are 25-inch tires because this is the XL. And by the way, this thing is looking good. It's looking good. I've been lazy about building it because I'm not an XL guy, but I see the potential in having all of this extra room. And the footprint is the same as a VF-1. Just the wheelbase is 4 inches longer. That's it. You have 6 inches more driver room for adjustability, but it's only 4 inches longer. It's the same track width. It's about 62 inches wide. And you have a lot more room for your seat. You have a lot more room for your engine, for your feet, everything. And with all these cross members in, it looks really good. So after I did all that, I used my jack stands to set it at the approximate ride height I want to use. Now this is at, looks like 13 inches off the ground. Now there is going to be sags, but that's also why I tack everything up. If I want to change anything, then I can cut my tacks loose and tighten it up for how I want. That's what the fabrication process is. All this stuff just makes it a lot easier and a lot faster to get behind the wheel and start driving your own machine. So after that, I look for shock mounting points. How am I going to mount these shocks up? How do I want the adjustability to be? How many modes am I going to have? What am I going to use it for? So for this one, I have the shock here, and I have it lined up, and I decided to make a plate here. Too easy, right? So that way I can just run tabs off of here. It's a flat piece, so I don't have to worry about any of the angles of cutting around a tube to mount it. And obviously I have all of this to play with plus more. Now, when it comes to shocks, I don't like it when the shock stroke or the force depends on the strength of my weld, right? I'm a highly adequate welder, and I admit that. This is just a hobby for me. So anything that depends on the weld, I get nervous about. So I use metal to make up for that. So if my tabs are pointing in line with the force, then it's depending on all of this steel for strength rather than my weld. If I put my tabs facing upward, it's testing that weld, and I don't want that. So that's my order of operations, at least for the front. It can be as easy as you want, or you can make it as hard as you want. I use ATV shocks. These white ones right here are off of I believe a Can-Am. These are off of a four-wheeler, and you can see the springs are a little thinner. There's less spring, but I could make any of these work. That's the thing. You can make all of this stuff work. I do not advise getting side-by-side shocks. Look at how stiff these are. Now, these came in on kind of a package deal that I purchased, so I didn't really spend money on them, but ended up with them. And you can see how burly these springs are, right? So this is for a 450-pound machine. This is for like a 1,300-pound machine. This is sitting at like 800 pounds, tops, right? It's probably going to be more like 700. So you can add spring rate to smaller springs, but you can't take out spring rate from bigger springs. I hope that makes sense. Now, like I said, there's all kinds of math you can do to get a longer stroke and make this spring less effective, increase the dampening, but that's all up to you. I prefer the simple stuff. So that's how we're doing this one, just simple, just finding it, setting the right height, getting that, and then I'm just going to adjust this spring until it's how I like it. Let's continue on. Let's make some tabs. All right, shock mounting is easy. Just don't overthink it, right? So just made some flat bars to go across here, made 2 tabs. Now, if you combine flat angles, it makes it a little bit easier to mount. Now, the important thing here is alignment. You want your shock to be completely centered so that your shock doesn't get messed up as it is going through its stroke. A setup like this gives you tons of adjustment and maneuverability before you tack it in, and definitely tack it in. You want to match to the left and right sides, which means these tabs need to be pretty accurate, but if they're not, your frame is sitting level, right? Which means your suspension is sitting level. So as long as your tires are the same, and everything is sitting like this, when we attach these and remove the jack stands, the cart will be sitting level with equal pressure on each shock. I hope that makes sense to you. Now, there's different ways to mount these. I've mounted these in, I don't know, at least 3, maybe 4 different ways. So it's just picking what is right for that application, right for your ride height, you know? If I wanted this to be lower, or if I had big 20-foot shocks, I could mount a shock tube right here and have it running up to that, which would look very cool, but I can't afford 2-foot king shocks to put on here. Maybe someday. So we'll get this welded up, take it off the jack stands, and just see how it does. All right, moment of truth. Let's see how we did. Oh, that's nice. That is nice. It's squishy. When you really jump on it, it's not even coming close to bottoming out. It's only like half the stroke. That is incredibly nice. Woo! All right, so we're going to start with the rear shock and initial setup. This shock is obviously bigger, like I showed you earlier. I believe it's the front shock off of a Razor 800, but I'm not 100% sure. I know that the shock body is 2 inches. A 2-inch shock body will give you a lot of options on aftermarket springs. So I'm going to mount this up, and if it turns out to be too stiff, I could actually probably find a lighter spring. But I'm going to take that into account when I mount this. Obviously, the further you go in, the more authority your arms have over your spring. The further out you go, the more authority your springs have over your A-arms. So you can kind of do the wag, or you can do the math. Also with springs, the angle of the spring has a lot of effect on it. If I were to put these in here and stand them straight up, the spring would get authority because of the angle, but the arm would get the authority because of how far out it is on the arm. So I'm shooting for about halfway out to 2/3 out. Usually I go way out here, but usually I use ATV shocks. So with these, I'm going to pull them in and give some authority to the arms, but it's also going to make this kind of a longer stroke shock. So I'm pretty excited to see the results. Now, what I did to fit them in there, usually I'd take a piece and box this all in, but since I'm bringing it in, I cut a slick little piece, and I'm going to kind of countersink it to get a cool look. Now, with that in place, it's going to get strength from that slight countersink in the A-arm, and it's going to make mounting it super easy because we have a flat surface. Whenever you have a flat surface and not a tube, it makes it a lot easier. Let's make some tabs up, get these done. All right, so taking a look at this and trying to figure out how to mount it up here. Now, we could just mount 2 tabs coming right off this bar, 2 tabs coming off of here. There's many ways to do it, but the plate at the bottom, I kind of wanted to match that flow. So I took a piece of cardboard. I'm using 3-inch flat bar, and I just make designs out of it. So the old CAD, the old cardboard aided design, put it right up in there, but that was sticking out a little bit. So a dotted line means a bend, put a single bend in it, and look at how it triangulates this whole area, plus gives an awesome place to mount a shock. So now it's just taking it in. I got my protractor. I measured how much bend it is. It's about 20 degrees, and that's an easy just vice bend. Let's do it. All right, so we've got our lower landing plate and our upper mounting plate. I made some nice little tabs. I cut these at an angle because I like the force to run in line with the shaft. And then we have upper tabs that are just flat. Flat surfaces makes it easier to mount things. So we'll just set that in there. Set these up here. And you can see it's holding itself in place. That's how well this turned out. I am super excited about it. These shocks look good on here. And it's going to be a breeze to weld up, and it's going to be super strong using only 1/8-inch plate. How cool is that? Excellent. All right, a lot of hard work done today. Let's see what we got. It's not falling on its own. Let's see how stiff those springs are. I'm guessing they're going to be very stiff. No. Oh, they're so nice. Oh, if anything, they could be a little stiffer. Oh, the progressives are so nice. Wow. Excellent. Absolutely excellent. The VF-1 XL is now a roller. Well, that's it, Crosskart fans. We've got front suspension, rear suspension, and it's totally tunable. And we can also adjust it because we made those landing plates on the back. We can move it out if we are getting too soft of a suspension. And obviously we can tweak all of that since we used flat surfaces. So that's it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for joining along on this fun. I really appreciate it. You guys are so awesome, and I love all of your builds. You guys, I wish we could all just get together and build together. It'd be so fun. So next time we're going to do the steering rack, steering, Ackerman, bump steer, all that fun stuff. Get a seat in here and some steering stuff. On this one, I'm actually going to do driver fit up before the engine, but that's just because the XL has that extra room. Like, I can worry about making myself comfortable before I worry about shoving a motor in here. On the standard VF frames, you want to put the engine in before you fit up the driver. That way you get the most out of a small compact race car frame. I can't wait to see this one, and I hope you guys can either. Till next time, enjoy the build.
Holy shit!